All right, well, I'm going to talk to you a little bit today. Jay asked about recruiting, but I think recruiting is a mental attitude. I really do. I think recruiting is a mindset, and we talked about that. But first of all, back in 1983, Jackie and Debbie Walker asked me to take a look, Lisa and I, the rainbow presentation. And one Sunday afternoon, a guy by the name of Jimmy Grissom came to my mom and dad's homes, and Lisa and I were there at the time, so we decided, what the heck, let's just look at the rainbow now, and we won't have to get the guy to come over to the house. And so I agreed, and we took a look at the rainbow, and at the end of the presentation, you got to keep in mind, my mom and dad weren't very wealthy people. We were kind of on the lower end of the pole, but I had no idea that my mom and dad would buy a rainbow. I mean, it was the last thing in my mind. And Jimmy Grissom got to the end of that presentation, and my dad looked at my mom and said, "Lucy, do you want one?" Well, my mom said, "HB, I would love to have that rainbow." And my mom and dad bought a rainbow, and Lisa was standing here, and Dave, the next thing you know what Lisa said. Lisa said, "Well, Benny, if they can get one, why can't we get one?" And I said, "Well, Lisa, other than the fact that we're broke, and we don't have the credit to finance one, that would be the only reason we wouldn't buy a rainbow today." And the salesman that Jimmy Grissom was, he took a credit application and handed it to my wife instantly and said, "Fill this out, and if you get approved, I'll bring your rainbow back." My wife did that and instantly jumped on the telephone and called her mom and said, "Mom, you have got to take a look at this vacuum." And she said, "Okay, well, just send him over after you finish there." Jimmy Grissom went to Lisa's mom and dad's home, and they were in better shape. He owned his own company, but I still had no clue that he was going to buy a rainbow. And the very same thing happened at the end of the presentation. Mr. Comer looked at Miss Comer and said, "Well, Margaret, do you want one?" And she said, "I'd love to have one." And Jimmy Grissom just sold his third rainbow that day. And I can remember, like it was yesterday, that we were walking back across the street, because we lived across the road from Lisa's mom and dad. And we were walking back across the street. I was standing here. My father-in-law was here. Jimmy Grissom was there. And my father-in-law said something that changed my life forever. He said, "Jimmy, do you need anybody else selling these vacuum cleaners?" Now, I like to broke out in laughter, because my father-in-law was supposed to sell these vacuum cleaners. Well, Jimmy Grissom said, my father-in-law, Jimmy Grissom said, "I don't know, but you can call this man right here." And he wrote Leon Mara's name down and his number. And he handed it over to my father-in-law. And you know what my father-in-law did, Dave? He handed it right to me and said, "Benny, you need to call these people tomorrow." Now, why did my father-in-law do that? Well, the reason was because his daughter and his little grandson, at the time, my son was 2.5 years old. Carla was not born at the time. He knew that they didn't have a very bright future ahead of them with me. And he knew that I needed to make some money. And so I did. But the point I'm trying to make is this. Later on, I got Jackie and Debbie into the rainbow business. But you know what Jimmy Grissom never mentioned in them 4 demos? He had sold Jackie and Debbie Walker a rainbow. He had sold my mom and dad a rainbow. He had sold Lisa and Lisa's mom and dad a rainbow. And he had sold us a rainbow. He had sold 4 rainbows. And he did not mention one time about getting into business or recruiting somebody. I later recruited Jackie and Debbie, and Jackie and Debbie got in the rainbow business. And don't get mad at me because he didn't recruit you first. I'm sorry, I got here first. Talk to Jimmy Grissom, go get him, don't kill him. But I tell you, for 14 years, Jackie, you worked under myself, you and Debbie. They averaged anywhere from 80 to 100 sales per month for 14 years, and I made an average of $200 at least on every sale that they ever sold. Now, if you put that in your calculator, what is more important? Jimmy Grissom chasing the sale or recruiting the person?
Recruit.
Absolutely. Later on, I became a distributor, and Jimmy Grissom came by my office one day, and Jim, he was looking for money for the football team. And I asked Jimmy Grissom, I said, Jimmy, why didn't you ever say anything about recruiting in your demos? And Jimmy Grissom responded and said this. He said, I didn't want the problem of dealing with other people. I didn't want the problem dealing with other people. What Jimmy Grissom thought was a problem was actually a success story to somebody else. The point is, face your problems head on. Stop running, stop dodging, stop ducking your problems. Remember, if you're going to lead the band, you have to face the music. You see, problems are an asset. We complain about problems and we run from problems, but problems have made you what you are today. Problems are the reason for every improvement you've ever made. Just remember, it's the oyster that is irritated by a grain of sand that makes that priceless pearl. Our antagonist is our helper. It strengthens our wit. It strengthens our muscles. It develops our skill. It transforms your spine into steel. You must have a great problem in life and solving before you can know success and reach your highest potential. Dr. Marie Ray, a national renowned psychiatrist, did a study of the great to see if there was a common denominator for their success. And there was. It was called a great problem. See, your problems produce resistance. And I can tell you, it was called a great problem. And let me tell you this. Helen Keller was blind, deaf, and could not speak, and went to college and graduated with honors. Roger Bannister, as a 10-year-old little boy, got burned over 90% of his body in a schoolhouse fire. and went on to become the first man to run the 4-minute mile. Fanny Crosby was blind and wrote some of the greatest gospel songs this earth will ever hear, because she's seen more of Jesus in her blindness than we see with 20/20 vision. Franklin Delano Roosevelt became the President of the United States of America in a wheelchair. And Dr. Ray's conclusion was this: no one can succeed who is not driven by a great problem to become the very best. Go through the problem. Don't try to get around the problem. Face your problems head on. Your problems produce resistance. Without the resistance of air, a plane cannot fly. Without the resistance of water, a ship cannot float. Without the resistance of gravity, you cannot walk. Stop praying for an easier way and go through the problem. That's how you accomplish things in Rainbow. There's going to be times that you don't feel like keep it on. But you've got to face your problems and go through them. Back in 1983, I recruited a good friend of mine in the Rainbow business. In fact, he's here today. Mr. Willie Carroll, stand up. This guy's been with me for 34 years. Had a tough year. He lost his daughter this past year. And I want you to know that I pray for you and your family a lot. We were out of places to go and pretty in a desperate situation. You see, you get in desperate situations in this business for one reason. Why? Because you don't recruit people. See, when you're just selling rainbows yourself and something happens, you can't do shows, then you get in a desperate situation. When something happens to the transmission in the car, it becomes a family crisis when you just have yourself. But we had run out of places to go. And one Saturday morning, I asked Willie, I said, Willie, let's go down to a little place that we can go knock on some doors. Let's see if we can get in some doors and sell a rainbow. Neither one of us had sold a rainbow in a while. So I got that little brown Toyota Corolla. Jackie, I bought it from you for $600. And so help me, Dave, I was coming down the road one night after a demo, and a deer come out of the side of the woods and hit right in the back quarter panel of that Toyota Corolla. And let me tell you something. It put a dent in that Toyota Corolla that big. It was big. It wouldn't have been a bigger dent if a Mack truck had hit it. I would always go running on them demos and stuff, and I'd try to park that little Toyota in the way that the customer couldn't see that big old dent inside of my car. Willie called it a little brown tick. It was brown, it was small, it had a big dent in the side, all that, and it looked like a little big brown tick on wheels. And we went flying down the road, and I pulled into a neighborhood. And I got out of the car and I went to the door with Willie, and I knocked on the door, and a little old lady came through the door. And that little old lady, we talked her way into the house, and I said, Willie, you go in here and show this one. I'm going to go down the street, and I'm going to get in another home. I got in another home, and you know what desperation means? It means you're trying to just do everything you can to sell a rainbow. You ever been there? Yeah. I was broke, I needed the money, and I thought I was doing really good. And all of a sudden, for some reason that I still don't know, the man stood up off of that sofa and said, you can get your stuff and get out of my house. Well, I was pretty much, and I didn't know what to do. I had never been told that before. And so I gathered my stuff up, and I don't even know where I even dipped it in water. I put the stuff in, I put it in that little Toyota, and I just got it out of there. I was riding up the street, and I seen Willie on the corner up there. And it looked like he had his rainbow box with him. And I pulled up beside Willie, and I rolled the window. Back in those days, man, you had to roll the window. I rolled the window down. And I said, well, what happened? Willie said, well, I was in there, and Benny, I thought I had it closed out. But she wouldn't buy, and I couldn't close it. And so I packed my stuff up, and I went out there on her doorstep, and I was smoking a cigarette. And that little old lady came out of that door, and man, she was mad as she could be. And I don't even know what she said, but she told me to get the heck out of here and stay off her property, and I just moved out of here to the dirt. I told Willie, I said, Willie, have you had enough? He said, yeah, I have. I said, I have too. Let's go home. And I was riding back home, and I was trying to think of something to say to Willie, to encourage him about all the failures we've been through that day. But I couldn't hardly utter a word out of my mouth. I got home, and I told my wife that I was done. That I was going to go back to the job that I had before. And she looked me in the eye, and she said, Benny, we didn't get in this business to quit. You need to get out there and get on some more demos. She said, honey, it's going to be all right. Just keep doing it. Don't go back and get that job. Listen to me. Listen to me. Falling down does not make you a failure. Listen to me. Falling down does not make you a failure. Staying down makes you a failure. Get up and try again. Get up and try again. Get up and try again. You know, the thing about Rainbow is this. It reminds me of a company that the president of the company wanted all his people, all his employees to be really successful in Rainbow. I mean, in that company. Needed to be a Rainbow. And so what he did, he went to a great philosopher. And he told that great philosopher, could you put in words something that I could give to my employees to make sure that they are great in what they do and they can become successful like I have. The philosopher went away, and he came back and he had a book about that thick. And the president of the company said, that's way too much information. There's no way that they could understand everything in the book. Can you condense it and make it smaller? So the philosopher went away and came back in a couple of weeks, and he had a book about that size. And the president of the company opened up the book and said, it's still way too much information. Can you make it smaller? And he came back later and he made a little pamphlet. And the president of the company opened it up and said it's still way too much information. A couple of weeks later, he came back and he had one sheet of paper. And it was 5 words on that sheet of paper. 5 words on that sheet of paper that said, there ain't no free lunches. Let me tell you something about success in this business, folks. If you're going to get it done, if you're going to be successful at what you do, you got to get up in the morning and put one foot on the floor and put the other one on the floor and stand up and go to work. That's what you got to do. That's what successful people do. Successful people don't work 40 hours. We talked about it before. You got to get up and you go to work every single day. George Mueller was a German man. And he wanted to be a missionary. Not because he loved God, or not because he was a saved man, but because back in those days, it meant great stability, benefits, and retirement. George Mueller went to the seminary, and he saw his professor praying on a bench. And George Mueller got saved. And as he was walking from the seminary, he walked past an insane asylum. And back in those days, that's where they housed the children with no parents, the crazy people, the murderers, the rapists, all in one compound of human suffering. And George Mueller said he looked down as he was walking by the iron gates, and he seen a little girl sticking her arm through the iron gate. George Mueller said he looked down at that little girl, and he told God that he would take care of every child, that he would financially empower him to do so. And he went home and he told his wife, and they brought 4 children inside their home. The next month they brought 4 more. The next month, by a special decree from the English government, they were allowed to bring other children into their home and buy another home beside their home and started housing these children. George Mueller exhausted every bit of the wealth that he had ever accumulated taking care of these children. He even sold the silverware that was given to him and his wife on their wedding day, and that was something a man of a German heritage would never part with. They sat down one morning at the breakfast table with not a gram of food in the house. But George Mueller said he was going to say the grace and thank God for all he had provided for them. And as he got through saying the grace, they heard the thud of the rear wheels of a wagon coming down a cobblestone street out in front of their house, and a local merchant brought enough food to feed them for more than a month. George Mueller then is responsible for over 10,000 children fed and clothed in all the days of his life. George Mueller is responsible for the starting of orphanages that house children all over the world. And then at the age of 72, went on to become a missionary like he had intended on being. How did he do that? How did he do that? He did it little by little. How are you going to build your rainbow dream? How are you going to get big in Rainbow? You're going to get one recruit in, you're going to get another one. But let me tell you something that'll never happen until you get passionate about recruiting. You're not going to build anything worth anybody talking about unless you get passionate about what you do. Things go, and time goes on. It reminds me of an artist that was living in a village. And he was so good that everybody in all villages would come from miles around to watch him paint. Every time he would start the painting, people were in awe of what he did, what he was doing. They said, "You're going to be the greatest of all time. You're going to be like a Rembrandt, a Da Vinci, or something of that sort. You're going to be somebody that's going to be painting the best masterpiece that ever." But he was a procrastinator. It was too bright. He couldn't paint. The clouds were too low or they were too high. The wind was blowing just a little too much or it won't blow enough. Days become weeks. Weeks become months. Months become years. And time passes on. And he died one day, and they put his half-painted piece of artwork in his casket. And nobody knows his name today. Let me tell you something. Procrastination will take away all your dreams. It will rip them away from you just as fast as anything you've ever done. The best time is right now. 2018, you got a decision to make. If you do the same thing and you think you're going to go out and sell a bunch of rainbows and get rich and not recruit, next year you're going to be in the same situation that you are right now. The only thing that's going to change your rainbow world is how many people you get in this business. And by the way, it don't hurt them a bit either, does it, Jackie and Debbie Walker, when you get in? You know, when you recruit somebody, you're not recruiting them for yourself a lot of times. You can help somebody else get a little bit too, if you know what I mean. So you're helping all. But you got to set a goal. Florence Chadwick was the first lady to swim the English Channel. She had set out to swim from the Catalina Islands to the San Francisco coast. It was 1959 on July the 2nd. She was going to be the first woman to swim what we know now as the Catalina Channel. And there were, all the TV cast was piled into a boat as they floated down the Pacific while Florence Chadwick was taking stroke after stroke. The waters were cold. They had a man on each side of the boat, on the stern and the bow of the boat with rifles, shooting off shark attacks that attacked her lone figure as she swam through the cold waters of the Pacific. The support team was hollering out encouragements for her to keep keeping on. Encouragement to keep keeping on. Florence Chadwick did something that day that she had never done before. She asked to be pulled into the support boat. Florence Chadwick was giving up. Despite the encouragement from the support team, I know you don't want to do it. Keep swimming. You don't have that far to go. But just with a few thousand feet ahead, Florence Chadwick asked to be pulled inside that boat. And as she lay there in her shivering body from the coldness of the waters, a reporter asked her, said, "Florence, why did you give up? Why did you give up? You had just a little ways to go." And Florence Chadwick said this. She said, "It won't by the coldness of the waters. It won't from the fear of the shark attacks. And I really want that fatigue. It was the fog. If only I could have seen land, I would have kept going. Florence Chadwick lost sight of her goal. And she gave up. 2 months later, she tried again. This time, despite that same dense fog, she kept her goal in sight and her faith intact. And she did it. Because she knew somewhere on the other side of that dense fog, there was land. And she not only did it, but she did it in record time and became the first woman to swim what we know now as the Catalina Channel. What I'm saying to you is this. There will be cold waters you have to go through. There will be shark attacks, Dave, on you at times. And there will be a dense fog that you have to move through. But if you keep your goals in sight and your faith intact, then through recruiting, help me out, through recruiting, I didn't hear you, through recruiting, you can build that empire that we all dream about. And I hope all your rainbow dreams come true. Thank you.